Hi everyone, it's John. Welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. And because it's Wednesday, I wanted to bring you another book review of a book I've recently finished. This is, I think, the fourth or maybe fifth review by a Liberty Fund book that I've done on this channel. This is one of the several books that they have peripheral to the works of Adam Smith. This is Adam Smith, The Man and His Works by E.G. West. Adam Smith, The Man and His Works was first published in 1976 for the bicentennial of the publication of Smith's maybe most widely known scholarly effort, The Wealth of Nations, published the same year as the Declaration of Independence. But my interest in economics and free trade is marginal to, economics joke, at best. So I sort of wanted to read this book to see what it had to say, not only about economics and the Wealth of Nations, but also what it had to say about everything else. And it turned out I picked the right book for sort of a comprehensive, albeit short, comes in at around 240 pages or so, assessment of all of his work. This is a pretty serviceable book, whose prose can be admittedly a little bit on the professorial and dry side, but it's nevertheless, it does a really good job at introducing Adam Smith to a general audience of readers who were maybe previously unfamiliar with his body of work. One of my favorite aspects of the book was that he draws really widely from contemporary letters, diary entries, and books in a way that were written by Smith's own friends, family members, colleagues, co-workers, that really builds him up in a way that makes him seem warm, companionable, maybe a little bit eccentric, but really fleshes him out fully as a human being. And if you don't like anything else about the book, it would be hard to say that West doesn't do a good job at making Adam Smith into a real life, flesh and blood human being, and his infectiousness for his excitement for Smith is kind of infectious too. This isn't for anyone who wants just solely an exposition of the major points of Wealth of Nations. There is one longer chapter towards the end of the book where its major points are sort of summarized in a kind of perfunctory way, pretty accessible to someone whose familiarity with the original has been maybe delayed for fears of economic obscurantism or the fact that it's a 900-page book or whatever else. West also briefly touches on the ways in which Smith's ideas influenced free trade in his own lifetime and afterwards. Shortly after this, he sort of wanders off. One of the weird sort of sidetracks he takes in the book, after talking about the book for an entire chapter, sort of wanders off into Smith's opinions about the Irish question, which was, towards the the middle and towards the end of the 18th century, the question, then relevant question of contemporary calls for Irish nationalism and Irish nationality, which shouldn't have really been an issue in the 70s, but Ireland had obviously been its own thing for a while. In short, I mean, if you're looking for a reading guide, I guess, in an effort to understand the Wealth of Nations more fully and to sort of yeah, a reading guide, I guess. This isn't it. Like I said, it has one chapter towards the end called A Wealth of Nations, so it's very easy to find. But this is very much a book that is interested in telling you the story of his life and sort of the big, broad forest for the trees picture, not just Wealth of Nations. It does try to discuss, at least briefly, all of Smith's major bodies of work. And I don't just mean the moral sentiments, either the theory of moral sentiments, which came out, I guess about 16 or 18 years before the Wealth of Nations. The theory of moral sentiments, if you have not heard of it or read it, certainly worth your study, worth study all of its own. If he had written nothing else, I think that we would probably still be talking about his name all these years later, even without Wealth of Nations. But it also goes over his lectures on rhetoric, his lectures on the belles-lettres, his lectures on jurisprudence, and his major essays on philosophical subjects, most of which he wrote during his dozen or so year stretch as a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Glasgow. West touches on all of this by, like I said, vignettes by friends, scholarly influences, co-workers, who included the likes, by the way, of David Hume, Adam Ferguson, his great teacher, Francis Hutcheson, to paint a picture of him as a person. I guess it's kind of like a biography with some heavy intellectual influences. Because they help flesh out Smith as a sympathetic and passionate, as well as a skilled teacher, they were, like I said, among my favorite parts of the book. I did like the stuff about his work, but learning about him as a person, I think, was even more interesting. In 1764, when Smith resigned from the University of Glasgow, he tried to return the fees. This is one of the few examples that is given about the kind of person that Smith was. He tried to return the fees that he had previously collected from students. That's how you paid for school back then, right? You didn't pay the university, you paid your lecturer directly. And when he announced that he was leaving, he realized that, of course, he wasn't going to be able to finish the lecture series that he had promised, so he wanted to return the difference to all of his students. And they were so effusive in their praise for him. They loved him so much as a teacher, thought he was so erudite, that they refused, and they insisted that he keep it. Apparently, he was always more comfortable one-on-one or in small groups, but in front of a lecture hall was a very, very memorable teacher, by all accounts. West also says, I don't know if this is true, but it would be pretty interesting if it happened this late. He says that Adam Smith was one of the first professors at the university to not lecture in Latin, but to choose to lecture in English instead, because he thought that would make his talks more accessible for his students. So just a really, really interesting life. Nice summation of his whole body of work. Just wanted to note towards the end of the review that in the 1980s, the Liberty Fund, which, like I already told you, published the book, also published the Glasgow edition of Adam Smith's complete works, including all of the works that I listed in the review. It is, for anyone who has the time and interest in learning about Smith's encyclopedic range of interests and specialties, for that matter, slowly working one's way through those 10 volumes would be, I guess, an ideal way to read this book. If you're not interested in the entire set, they also sell them separately, so you can buy them piecemeal depending on what you're interested in. I currently have, and I just wanted to show you So if you think the editions look attractive, you can pick some up. Of course, Liberty Fund is always very, very reasonably priced, and I'll take any opportunity that I can to talk about them. This is, unfortunately, they are still in cellophane wrapping. I have read Theory of Moral Sentiments before, but obviously not this copy, since it still has the cellophane on it. But this is their copy of the Glasgow edition. Very nice, quite inexpensive. By the way, the 10-volume set itself is also not terribly expensive, because I think it's only available in paperback anymore. And I also have the essays on philosophical subjects I was not able to find, but here are the lectures on rhetoric and belles lettres. So a nice little thing there. If you're interested in anything in particular, reading along while you're reading about him, of course, there are probably better books as far as biographies about him out there. You know, he's not exactly an unpopular guy, so there are some choices that you have. But I wanted to tell you about my reading. As you know, I review everything I read on the channel, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about it. And I will be back tomorrow with a special video, a special anniversary video. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.